The day Aiden first met her, the world had already stopped believing in mercy. He was only 12, yet his heart was older than the broken sky above him. Carthus 9 was a planet that smelled of rust and hunger. The wind carried the taste of iron, and the air shimmered with dust so thick it turned skin gray. Aiden crouched behind the wreck of a cargo hauler, watching a group of slavers drag their captives across the sand. The smallest figure among them stumbled, a child wrapped in a torn violet cloak, hands bound, hair like pale fire against the gloom. When one of the slavers struck her, something inside him snapped. He didn't think. He moved. His bare feet kicked up dust as he sprinted toward the chaos, heart hammering against his ribs. The first thing he grabbed was a shard of metal jutting from the wreck, still warm from the crash. He flung it with everything he had. It hit one of the masked men in the shoulder. The slaver cursed, turning his weapon toward the boy. Aiden dove behind a rusted tank, adrenaline drowning out the instinct to run. A second later, the tank exploded. Fuel vapor ignited in a wave of heat and sound that threw everyone to the ground. The girl screamed as fire swallowed the slaver's transport. Aiden crawled through the smoke, coughing, until he reached her. Her wrists were bleeding from the restraints. Her strange eyes, violet and too bright, locked on his face with disbelief. "Can you run?" he shouted. She hesitated only a heartbeat before nodding. He broke the brittle cord with the edge of a rusted blade, grabbed her hand, and they ran. Blaster fire hissed past them, scorching the sand. Aiden dragged her into the skeleton of an old refinery, weaving through twisted pipes and shadows. The echo of their breaths filled the silence between explosions. When they finally stopped, she could barely stand. He tore a strip from his sleeve and wrapped it around her wrists. "You're bleeding," he said, though his own arm was cut and raw. "You'll get caught because of me," she whispered. Her voice was melodic but cracked, like someone unused to speaking. "Already did," he said, forcing a grin. "Might as well make it worth it." She looked at him then, truly looked, and something in her gaze softened. "You're human. Last I checked. Humans don't help my kind. I'm not good at rules." For a while they sat in silence, hidden from the slavers combing the dunes outside. The light filtering through the metal ruins painted the dust in soft gold. She touched the floor like she was testing if it was real. "I'm Solara," she said quietly. "Aiden." She studied his torn clothes, the scar on his cheek, the stubborn spark in his eyes. "Why did you help me?" He shrugged. "Didn't like the way they looked at you." "That's not a reason. Maybe I just wanted to do one good thing before this place eats me alive." Her small hand reached into her cloak, pulling out a piece of silver metal shaped like a tear. It glowed faintly from within. "My mother said this would protect me." "It didn't." He touched it carefully. "Maybe it still can. We'll find a way off this planet." Her expression twisted between hope and disbelief. "You can't even save yourself." "Maybe not," he said, "but I can save you." Outside, engines roared, the search parties growing closer. Aiden stood, scanning the corridors. "There's an old water shaft that leads to the canyons. It's deep enough to hide us." "Why are you doing this?" she asked again, almost angry now. "Because someone should have helped me once," he said, and walked. She followed. They crawled through the maintenance tunnels until the sound of shouts faded. The shaft opened into the lower canyon where the air was cool and still. A broken drone lay half buried in the sand. Aiden pried open its casing, salvaging a small ration pack. They shared it, one bite each, slow and careful. He watched her try to chew the dry food, her face scrunching in disgust. "Terrible, right? It tastes like dust pretending to be bread." He laughed for the first time in months. "Welcome to Carthus 9. Her smile, faint but real, made something stir in him he couldn't name. For a brief moment, the world felt less cruel. They stayed hidden through the night. She told him about the world she came from, oceans that glowed in the dark, skies with 3 moons, music made from crystal wind. He listened, pretending he could see it. When she noticed his silence, she asked softly, "What about you? Where's your family?" "Gone," he said. "The mines took them. I stayed because I thought if I worked hard enough, they'd come back. They didn't." "No, but I learned to steal from the guards." She leaned her head on her knees. You don't deserve to live here. Neither do you. When dawn came, their peace shattered. The slavers found their trail. The sound of engines echoed through the canyon. Aiden grabbed her hand. Go now. What about you? I'll distract them. No, he didn't let her finish. He shoved her toward a narrow passage where a smuggler's ship waited, half buried but still functional. He'd seen it before, hidden beneath tarps, guarded by old code locks. He'd spent months studying its pattern. He pressed the activation pad, and the hatch hissed open. There's fuel left, he said breathlessly. Take it. Find someone who'll help you. She stared at him, panic in her eyes. I can't fly. You'll figure it out. You're smarter than me. The sound of boots on metal grew closer. He turned to face them. Aiden, she said, voice trembling, you'll die. Not today. He picked up the fallen slaver's weapon and aimed it toward the entrance. The first shadow appeared, and he fired. The recoil nearly knocked him down, but he held firm. Sparks danced across the canyon walls. Go, he shouted. She hesitated one last second, then pulled the pendant from her neck and threw it toward him. It hit his chest and clattered to the ground. Don't forget me, she cried. He picked it up, the metal warm against his skin. Never, he said. The ship's engines roared to life. Wind whipped through the canyon as it lifted, scattering sand like golden rain. Aiden turned back to the attackers, defiant. The blast of a stun charge knocked him to his knees, vision fading to white. When he woke, his hands were bound, and the world was silent again. The slavers were gone. The ship was gone. Only the pendant remained, glinting beside him in the dust. He closed his fingers around it. Somewhere beyond the clouds, she was free. That was enough. But as the soldiers dragged him toward the mines, he whispered into the wind, a promise carved from pain and hope. I'll find you again, Solara. No matter how long it takes, the wind carried the words across the endless desert, where even the sun seemed to pause to listen. The galaxy never stayed silent for long. 25 years after that day on Carthus 9, Aiden Vale had learned that even in victory, the stars screamed. He stood on the deck of the warship Astra Solis, watching the wreckage of another battlefield drift past. Whole fleets burned out here, ships turning slowly in the dark like dying embers. He was a commander now, decorated, respected, and exhausted. Every medal on his chest felt like a scar. He'd spent his life fighting in someone else's wars, chasing orders he no longer believed in. And yet, every night when sleep came slow, he still dreamed of violet eyes and a silver pendant glinting in the dust. The world called her Queen Solara now, ruler of the Stormlight Dominion. Some said she was divine, that she could bend storms and turn armies with a word. To Aiden, she was a ghost he'd failed to keep safe. He never believed in gods, but he believed in promises. And this one still burned. Commander Vale, a voice called. Lieutenant Morin stepped into the observation deck, his face pale under the ship's blue lights. We've reached the outer perimeter of Varel space. Orders? Aiden blinked back from memory. Maintain stealth orbit. No one fires unless I say so. They were deep inside enemy territory, a suicide mission disguised as diplomacy. The Terran Vanguard wanted intelligence from the Dominion's core world, a planet sealed by shimmering shields, impossible to breach. But Aiden had volunteered. He didn't say why. Maybe he needed to see if she was real, or if his mind had simply rewritten a dream into a face. Hours later, their infiltration craft sliced through the upper atmosphere of Lumeria Prime. The planet glowed like an ocean of light beneath a crystalline sky, every surface alive with energy. Towers curved upward like silver vines, and the air shimmered with soft luminescence. It was breathtaking and inhuman, a beauty carved by order and fear. The landing went wrong immediately. Aiden's team never even reached the data vault. The moment their boots hit the marble causeway, the air sang with alarm tones. Energy nets fell from above like shimmering webs. He shouted for his men to scatter, but the nets closed faster than thought. One by one, they vanished in a flash of light, then silence. Only him, trapped and alone. When the disorientation cleared, Aiden found himself kneeling in a vast hall of glass and silver. Guards in obsidian armor lined the walls, their faces hidden behind mirrored masks. The air pulsed faintly with music, or maybe machinery. At the far end of the chamber, on a throne carved from white crystal, sat the woman who haunted his dreams. She didn't need a crown. Her presence was enough. Silver armor traced her form like liquid light, her hair falling in soft waves that caught the glow of the hall. Her eyes, still that impossible violet, swept across him with quiet authority. For a moment, Aiden couldn't breathe. "Name," she said, her voice calm but cutting through the hall like a blade. The name hung in the air like thunder. Gasps rippled through the hall. No one dared speak her name aloud. Her eyes narrowed and her voice turned cold enough to burn. "Only one man ever called me that, and he's been dead for 25 years. They struck him then, hard across the face. He tasted blood but smiled anyway. Guess I'm harder to kill than you remember." Her composure cracked, barely, before she turned away. "Take him below, the dungeons." As the guards dragged him through corridors carved from living crystal, Aiden's thoughts spun. She was alive. She was powerful. And she remembered him, no matter how much she wanted to hide it. The cell was small, but the walls pulsed faintly with energy, like a heartbeat. When the guards left, the silence returned. He pressed his palms against the restraints, testing them. Unbreakable, the same word they once used for her spirit. Hours passed, or days. He couldn't tell. Then footsteps echoed. Light spilled through the doorway, softer than before. She entered alone. Gone was the armor. She wore a dark cloak, her face half hidden, but her voice was unmistakable. "You shouldn't have come here." He smiled faintly, leaning against the wall. "Would have sent a letter, but your empire doesn't take mail from dead men." She didn't laugh. Her eyes shimmered with something between anger and grief. "You could have stayed away, Aiden. You could have lived and let you think you were forgotten." Her jaw tightened. "You don't understand what I've done to survive. What I've become, try me." She stepped closer until he could see the faint silver lines on her wrist, scars like those from long-gone restraints. "I was a child the day you saved me. I didn't know how cruel the universe could be. When the slavers sold me, I escaped and found people even worse. I learned to fight, to command, to build something no one could tear apart. And you became their queen." "I became their weapon first," she said softly. "Then their ruler. Power was the only language they understood. And mercy?" She looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "Mercy is for those who can afford it." He saw the pain beneath the steel. The child in the desert still lived behind the crown. "You don't have to do this alone," he said. "Whatever you're fighting, let me help." Her lips parted, a whisper escaping before she caught herself. "You still sound like him." "I am him." She turned away sharply. "No, that boy belonged to a dream that burned out long ago. This world doesn't need heroes. It needs survivors." "And what about promises?" he asked quietly. "Do they survive?" Her shoulders stiffened. She looked back, eyes glinting with tears she refused to let fall. "Some promises turn into ghosts," she said. "And ghosts have no place in a throne room." She moved toward the door. "Tomorrow you'll stand trial. Say nothing. The court will want blood. Yours or mine. Whichever keeps my empire intact." The door closed behind her, leaving only silence and the faint hum of the walls. Aiden sank to the floor, his heart heavy. The pendant still hung around his neck, its surface worn smooth by years of touch. He held it up to the faint light. "Still alive, Solara," he whispered. "Still keeping promises." Outside the cell, unseen, she paused in the corridor, her hand pressed to her chest as if to quiet her own heartbeat. For the first time in years, the queen who ruled storms felt the ache of something human, something she thought she'd buried in the dust of a forgotten desert. In the silence between galaxies, some memories refused to die. Solara had built an empire out of iron and vengeance, but one human name still echoed through her pulse like a secret prayer you could never silence. Aiden Vale. The boy who once dragged her out of a nightmare and gave her hope when the universe had none. And now that same boy, grown into a soldier with tired eyes and a scar across his cheek, sat imprisoned beneath her palace like a ghost returned to test her soul. For 2 nights she did not sleep. The weight of her crown pressed heavier with every breath. From the window of her private chambers, she could see the whole of Lemuria Prime, the crystal spires, the glowing rivers, the stormlight that gave her empire its name. It was beautiful, perfect, orderly, and cold. Somewhere beneath all that perfection, a man who once bled for her waited in chains. She told herself it was mercy that made her hesitate to order his execution. But when she walked through the quiet corridors toward his cell, she already knew it wasn't mercy at all. It was something older, something she had buried in the dust of Carthus 9. Aiden heard the door open and didn't bother to look up. "If this is about the food," he said dryly, "tell your cooks the porridge tastes like recycled air filters." Her voice answered softly, still insolent. He lifted his head. She was standing there without guards, wrapped in a dark cloak that shimmered faintly with silver threads. Her face was calm, but her eyes were raw, stripped of the royal ice she wore before the court. "You're risking your throne coming here," he said. "I already risked my soul becoming queen," she replied. "One more visit won't matter." She deactivated the energy cuffs with a small wave of her hand. The locks hissed open. Aiden rubbed his wrists, surprised. "Should I take that as forgiveness?" "As curiosity," she said. "You came here for a reason. Tell me what the Terrans are looking for." "I could ask you the same thing," he said. "Why does the queen of half the galaxy still hunt for ghosts in her own archives?" Her gaze sharpened. "You were found stealing sealed data, classified documents concerning the consortium." Aiden leaned against the wall, meeting her eyes. "So you do know that name." Solara crossed her arms, the queen returning to her posture. "They were the slavers who built their empire on the backs of my people. I burned them out years ago." "No," he said quietly. "You burned their shadows. The real consortium never died. They just changed masks." He pulled a small data crystal from the lining of his jacket, hidden even from her scanners. "This is what I came for. Lists of transactions, weapon shipments, medical experiments. Your Dominion's name appears on half of them." Her voice turned sharp. "You're accusing me?" "I'm saying they're using you," he said, "just like they used the Terrans, just like they used us all." She took the crystal, her hand trembling. The surface lit under her touch, and she saw the data flash across the projection. Images of her own ministers, her own generals, signing trade deals with the consortium's hidden agents. The color drained from her face. "How long?" she whispered. "Years," he said. "While you fought for freedom, they built their empire again behind your throne." For a long moment, she said nothing. The light from the crystal cast pale shadows across her features. "They'll come for me," she murmured. "They already have," Aiden said. "My mission was to retrieve this before they could." The Vanguard intercepted a transmission, an assassination order bearing your seal. "Someone's framing you." She set the crystal down slowly, her breath shaking. "You came here to save me." He smiled faintly. "I told you once I'd keep my promises." Solara's composure cracked then, just slightly, the kind of break that lets light through. She turned away, hiding her face. "You're a fool, Aiden Vale." "Maybe," he said, "but I'm your fool." She closed her eyes, the old pain rising like fire. When she turned back, there were tears she didn't bother to hide. "When I escaped the slavers, I swore I'd never be weak again. I clawed my way to this throne with blood on my hands. I made myself into the weapon they could never break. And yet, you walk in here and I feel like that girl again, terrified and alive." He stepped closer, stopping only when their breaths mixed in the dim light. "Maybe that's what strength really is. Feeling and surviving anyway." Her fingers brushed the pendant, still hanging from his neck. The silver metal was dull now, but she recognized it instantly. "You still kept it." "I never take it off." She smiled faintly, sadness softening her face. "You were supposed to forget me." "I tried," he admitted. "Didn't work." The silence stretched between them, heavy with all the years they'd lost. Outside, thunder rolled faintly, artificial storms brewing over the palace domes. Solara's voice lowered to a whisper. "The consortium is planning something bigger than war. I've heard rumors of a weapon that can erase entire star systems. If that's true, then they'll use your empire to do it," Aiden finished. She nodded slowly. "We can't fight them alone." He took her hand, the contact both familiar and foreign. "Then don't. We fight them together." Like before, her hand trembled in his, the queen and the child warring within her. If my council finds out I've allied with a Terran spy, they'll tear me apart. Then let them try. She laughed softly through her tears. You never did know when to quit. He smiled, the kind of smile that carried 25 years of longing. Still don't. That night, the storm over Lumeria broke wide open. Lightning lit the horizon like veins of silver fire, thunder shaking the city. In the tower at the heart of the palace, Solara and Aiden stood over the holographic map of the Dominion. Their reflections shimmered in the glass. Here, she said, pointing to a region near the Void Rift. That's where the transmissions originated. If the consortium is hiding a base, it's there. Too deep for Terran ships, Aiden said, but your storm drives could reach it. They're unstable prototypes. Then we'll take one, he said, together. She looked at him, eyes shining like distant stars. You always say that word like it can fix everything. Because sometimes it does. She turned away, pretending to focus on the map. If we fail, they'll kill us both. If we fail, he said softly, we'll at least fail the same way we began, fighting for someone who deserved a chance. Solara's throat tightened. You still see that girl in the desert, don't you? I see the woman she became, he said, and I see the fire she still hides. Her walls finally broke. She reached up and touched his face, her palm against the rough edge of his jaw. I hate you for finding me again. Good, he said. Hate's closer to love than indifference. She kissed him then, slow, desperate, a collision of memory and need, the kind of kiss that tasted like 25 years of silence in storms. When she pulled away, her eyes were wet. If we survive this, Aiden Vale, I'll decide which it is. The lights flickered as the storm outside grew louder, shaking the foundations of the palace. Somewhere in the depths of the Dominion, the consortium's weapon pulsed awake, sending its first signal into the void. Neither of them noticed. For the first time in decades, they weren't enemies or rulers or soldiers. They were simply what they had always been, two souls bound by a promise made in the dust, ready to face whatever darkness waited beyond the dawn. Some promises were never meant to fade. They only waited for the right moment to burn again. When dawn broke over Lumeria Prime, it wasn't sunlight that touched the spires of the capital. It was fire. The consortium's fleet had arrived without warning, descending from orbit like a black tide. Energy beams cut through the clouds, and towers that had stood for centuries fell in minutes. The war Solara swore she would never allow had finally found her doorstep. In the command chamber, alarms screamed. Holographic maps flashed red as enemy ships broke through the planet's shields. Ministers shouted orders, officers panicked, and through the chaos stood Queen Solara, calm amid the storm. But inside her, something cracked. She had built her empire to protect her people from the monsters of her past. And now those monsters had returned, hungrier than ever. Aiden burst through the smoke-filled doorway, armor scorched, blood on his lip. The outer defense rings are gone. We have to evacuate the city. Her gaze didn't waver from the hologram. If we abandon the palace, the consortium will take the core chamber. That's where the Stormlight drives are stored. If they seize them, they'll have the power to destroy my entire systems, Aiden finished. Then we stop them here. She looked at him, her jaw tight. You came back. I told you. Together outside, the sky bled with color, purple storms colliding with the glow of laser fire. Civilians flooded the streets, their screams lost beneath the thunder of collapsing spires. Aiden grabbed a rifle from a fallen guard and tossed another to her. She caught it without hesitation. Ready? He asked. I was born ready, she said, and the old spark returned to her eyes. They moved through the corridor's bars side by side, cutting through enemy soldiers dressed in consortium black. The halls of crystal that once shimmered with peace now rang with battle cries. Sparks rained from the ceilings. Every step they took left smoke and fire behind. As they reached the upper balcony, they saw the enemy flagship hovering over the palace, its shadow blotting out the horizon. From its underbelly descended drop pods carrying reinforcements. Solara cursed under her breath. They're going for the core chamber. We're running out of time. Then we make them bleed for every step, Aiden said, loading another charge cell. When they burst into the chamber, a dozen consortium soldiers were already there, hacking into the Stormlight reactor. Aiden and Solara fought like two halves of the same heartbeat. She moved with liquid precision, each shot a dance, while he fought with the brutal grace of a man who had nothing left to lose. The last soldier fell, and silence settled, broken only by the hum of the reactor. The air shimmered with unstable energy. Aiden wiped the blood from his cheek. We bought a few minutes. No more. Solara's eyes darted to the reactor core. We can't let them take this. The Stormlight drives respond only to my neural signature. If they capture me, they'll use me to unlock them. Then we destroy it, he said immediately. Her expression froze. Destroy it, and the blast will level half the planet. He stepped closer. Then we find another way. But she was already looking at the reactor with something like resignation. There isn't one. This weapon was built to end wars, not survive them. If it detonates, it'll erase the consortium fleet, but it'll take me with it. Aiden grabbed her arm. No, we'll get you to the evacuation tunnels. She smiled sadly. Always the same boy, always trying to save everyone but yourself because someone has to, he said, voice a cracking. Solara turned to the control console and began typing in override codes. Aiden, listen to me. The reactor has a manual trigger deep inside the chamber. Only I can access it. He shook his head violently. You're not doing this. I have to, she said softly. I built this empire to make sure no child would ever be sold into chains again. If I let the consortium win, then everything I've done means nothing. He took her face in his hands. Then we die together. For a moment, her resolve faltered. You can't, she whispered. Someone has to tell them what happened here. Someone has to remember me not as a queen, but as the girl you saved. He wanted to argue, but she silenced him with a kiss. It was fierce, desperate, the kind of kiss that carried every word they never had the courage to say. When she pulled away, tears streaked her face. Thank you, Aiden Vale, for giving me the strength to live, and now the courage to die. The door behind them exploded open. Consortium troops poured in, led by a tall figure in a black mask. Aiden raised his rifle and fired until it overheated, the recoil burning his shoulder. Solara darted toward the reactor's central platform, energy whipping around her like a living storm. Aiden, she shouted. Go away, not without you. She turned, her eyes glowing like lightning. That's an order. He hesitated just long enough to see the masked leader aim at her. Without thinking, he threw himself in front of the shot. The blast hit him square in the chest, hurling him backward. Pain ripped through his body as he hit the floor. Solara screamed his name, but there was no time. The reactor's glow intensified. She pressed her hand to the core, her voice breaking. I'm sorry. Aiden forced himself to stand, staggering forward. Solara, don't! She looked back at him, smiling through tears. You saved me once, Aiden Vale. Let me return the promise. And then the chamber filled with light. The explosion was silent at first, a white bloom that swallowed sound and space. The shockwave tore through the palace, shattering glass, lifting ships from the ground. The consortium fleet disintegrated in orbit, swallowed by the storm she unleashed. When the light faded, there was nothing left of the reactor, only a crater of molten glass and a single figure lying in the rubble. Aiden. His armor was scorched, his body broken, but his hand still clutched the silver pendant. He woke days later in a field hospital, surrounded by silence. The war was over. The Dominion had survived. The consortium was gone, but so was she. He spent months searching the wreckage, hoping for a trace, a heartbeat, a fragment, anything. He found only her crown, melted and half buried in the glass. He kept it beside him when he finally left Lumeria Prime. Years passed. The galaxy rebuilt itself as it always did. Legends spread of the queen who called down a storm to end a war. Some said she ascended into light, others that she became one with the storm. But Aiden knew better. He knew she had simply kept her promise. One quiet evening, he returned to Carthus 9. The desert was still the same, endless, harsh, and haunted by ghosts. He found the ruins of the old refinery where a scared boy once hid with a strange little girl. From his coat, he pulled the pendant, now cracked down the middle. He knelt in the dust, pressing it into the ground. You found your freedom, Solara, he whispered. Now rest. A small violet flower had grown there, fragile yet alive, the only color in the endless rust of the desert. He smiled through tears. As the sun set over the wasteland, the wind carried a whisper across the dunes, soft, familiar, almost human. Aiden Vale. Promise kept. He closed his eyes, the sound of her voice fading into the wind, and for the first time in decades, his heart was at peace.